All right.
Sudden burst of chicken clucks.
Triangles.
Exactly.
Okay, blow my nose. We should look up a sound for just like excited. Just like the idea of sounds that instigate a feeling of excitement.
And it's like, it can be just the thing that we use in the podcast, and that can maybe become a thing. Who knows?
I like it. Maybe not. We made it! 2 years later!
We're like 2.5 years later, but we made it. We showed up on time.
Made it. I'm Lucy.
And I'm Sophie.
So you're listening to our episode 3, which you will probably hear them all in close succession. However, it has been over 2 years since we recorded episode 1 and 2.
Yep.
I did say in one of them that I was 34.
Yes, that is not the truth.
I'm now 36. Yeah. So, welcome to our secret time hop.
You experienced no time shift at all, dear listener, but we did. But last year was just epic. There's no way we could have put any energy into this.
It really was.
So
we just didn't know what we were doing 2 years ago.
No.
And
I mean, still, we don't, but we kind of have thought about our brains a bit more.
We've thought about our brains a bit more. I have now learnt basic editing on audio things. You have got an ADHD obsession with animating the podcast.
Yeah, but that's gone now, so I don't know.
That's gone. It was there while it lasted.
I got a lot of stuff done. No, it'll be fine.
So, yes, we're here 2 years later. It is March. It's the last day of March, 2025. I am in my home and in my lounge room, which is my studio. It is sunny.
Yeah, it's lovely outside.
Digby is sleeping in the hallway as usual. Mishka, who knows where Mishka is? Probably in his room because he has his own room now. And I have hay fever. So if I sound a bit nasally blocked, it's because I am nasally blocked.
Melbourne is like known for the hay fever issues, isn't it?
It's just a chaotic time of hay fever and
it's just turned autumn as well. So leaves are dropping. Hay fever is coming at you hard and strong and fast.
From all angles.
Yes.
So apologies for any nasally congestion that you auditorily hear.
Yeah. Well, I am in my home studio. We got extra fancy and figured out how to make podcasts over Zoom and the internet.
That was the other reason we didn't do it anymore, because we live far apart.
We do. We live about an hour away from each other. So it's a lot of effort to, get over there and set up, and dogs are everywhere.
And we're introverts.
Like also, I'm allergic to your cat, which I am very heartbroken about because I just want to smush him into my face.
And he wants to smush you real bad.
Yeah. It's very unfair. Anyway, I'm in my studio at home. The sun is streaming in, which is lovely. They're doing works down the street, so all our water is turned off. So I hope you can't hear the trucks and stuff going on in the background.
I can't hear them.
And I feel good. I feel healthy and happy and sprightly this morning. That usually only lasts a couple of hours a day. If that.
That's why we're recording in the morning.
Yes. And I'm excited because I got a new guitar yesterday, secondhand, and I just kind of want this over and done with so I can go and play with it.
Valid. And I do need to give Digby a bath. It's been many weeks, so.
That does take up a lot of your day, doesn't it? And energy.
Yes.
He is big hairy boy.
He's a big hairy boy. Yeah. Very fluffy.
Digby is your dog, by the way.
Yes, Digby's a standard poodle. We did mention him, and you can maybe see him.
Yes.
On the screen. Ha-ha.
Yeah, here's an animation of him right now. Bing!
Yes, it's been put off for so long that now I just have to do it. So
Yeah.
we're recording in the morning and then we will continue about our days and
Yes.
then come back. Part of where this episode came from after we dived back in and listened to our words that we'd already recorded because we were like, oh my gosh, yes, let's do this now. Thank you, Sophie's ADHD hyperfocus.
Just woke up in the middle of the night being like, bing, it's time.
Animate.
Happen.
We like that. And when I was listening back to episode 1, where we kind of talked about the reasons why we wanted to do it and communicating outside of words and all of those things, and I could hear like my experience of words and how I process information, I think is different to what people think. Like you mentioned that you think I do words well. And I know I can be very articulate at times, but my internal messaging, particularly about writing and like sentence construction and explaining myself in moments of pressure, I'm very bad at words. And that's like this kind of constant self-narrative. And I realized that because our context is only our context, that yeah, to some people we're actually really great at words and really bubbly and loose and free with our words, and they might be like, what, this is weird, they sound great at words, they're doing a podcast, they
Yeah.
pick to do words all the time.
Also, editing doesn't exist.
Yes. But yeah, I wanted to kind of first just run over our self-narratives because I think that, yeah, it gives us just an idea of one, perception and our self-perception is so powerful and limiting, or freeing,
I love that.
and also just completely unknown to everyone else. And that goes for everyone.
And so many people feel so alone and isolated because they think everyone else in the world is a certain way, but there's only so much that you share of yourself in the world on the internet and stuff. So
Yeah, we're very good at mind reading and at deciding and comparing
yeah,
and knowing exactly what everyone is thinking about ourselves. And it's just not true the majority of the time. And
massive.
that is particularly true with skill sets, with art, that's a big one, and with language and how we do words. And I think about how it's definitely stopped me from pursuing further study. And yeah, it stopped me from doing certain things. I stopped writing for years because of it. And so I thought we would give our context briefly before diving into some kind of like brain dump knowledge and
Love it.
interesting ideas about
Let's do it.
words and language in itself.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. This is something that I haven't necessarily thought very deeply about either. Like, yes, we talked about it in our podcast a year and a half, 2 years ago, however long it was. But like in general, I haven't necessarily thought about it that much. So I'm really excited to hear everything you have to say and the deep dive that you're going to bless us with in a little bit. I am very excited. Okay. So yeah, Lucy, I'd love to know what is your self-narrative? How do you see yourself and the words you make and how you make them, and yeah, bring us deep inside the mind of Lucy.
I will bring you deep inside my mind.
Off we go.
I definitely like experience. I think this is also maybe a neurodivergent pattern of like doing really well in primary school, and like school was so easy. High school, things changed. I think that's quite a common experience, or like a shared experience of a lot of people. And then as I got up into the higher years, I was given a lot of feedback about my writing, because I did choose like literature subjects, and I love reading and I love communicating, and I was getting feedback on my like essays and stuff that my sentences were backwards and my grammar was really bad. And I think moving from Townsville to Brisbane, no, Townsville to Melbourne, I did actually miss some key schooling around grammar in English, because the grades are different. In Queensland, they don't have prep and their education system's a little bit different. I mean, it's very similar, but you know. And Then, as I got older into uni, then that continued and it kind of got worse. And my friends, I had a lot of friends, we were doing theatre and they were writers, and two of them now have published books. So the bar was very high.
And the comparison to that,
The
like,
comparison to that,
yeah. It's like, yes,
that's
you're
a
in the same
lot.
class. You're on the same level in so many ways. Why aren't I feeling like I can also make books happen? Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yes, no, exactly. It's this like, oh my gosh, I'm definitely not as good and this is so frustrating. But also now stepping out of it, they're very good at writing. Like they're above average in many
And they
ways.
and maybe they had started practicing writing
Yes,
far earlier.
far earlier. And I think, yes, that kind of that in the creative writing realm of like not essay writing, was a bit of a like, oh, I definitely am just mimicking them. And then as I got into like honors years of my bachelor's degree, again, my thesis was really bad. It was a struggle, man. It was a struggle to write. And I got consistently poor feedback on my grammar, and my sentence structure is still bad. Masters, same thing. It was like pulling teeth writing my thesis, and I had to kind of do extra classes around how to do essay writing and stuff.
Wow, I did
Um,
not know that.
yeah, it's real.
You fooled me.
Hey, yeah, consistently. Like I remember in my honors, I got a really high mark for my performance project, but my thesis was just pretty poor. And then again, yeah, in masters. And I also had to pause my masters because of my mental health. And at the time, it's a very like convoluted moment that is hard to explain. But I was absolutely cognitively challenged in that my medication was not great. And yes, cognitively impaired, I guess, because of meds. And I had to stop and pause my master's because I had to sort that out. And I read back on like an ethics proposal or something, and it was whoa,
Wow.
whoa.
So after you came off the meds, you reread the thing, or
Yeah, I reread
so?
it and was like, oh my gosh,
Oh, so
oh
interesting.
no, this, I wrote
Yeah.
this and thought like
This was
it was
acceptable.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it actually didn't make any sense. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, that wasn't great. Um, so yeah, I have had like a lot of feedback in education settings that I'm not good at words. And then also conversationally, when I am stressed, I really struggle to articulate myself. And that has led to like just a lot of dissonance. And the same with like doctor's appointments. They're like, what's wrong? And you're like, I feel like I need to give you all the context for you to understand, but I can't do that because we have 10
15
minutes.
minutes. Yeah.
And then the issue is never really dealt with properly because I have not been able to articulate myself well enough. So that's been my internal messaging. However, I do know I am good at talking to people in other settings. I know I am good at making people feel comfortable and connecting with people. So that was my like internal background as we kind of stepped into this podcast together. And yeah, I just was like, oh yeah, that's my brain. That's my brain story. And you don't know my brain story. And no one else does. And I don't know your brain story. So I thought it would be interesting to touch base on that because we all have our own brain stories and they're not necessarily correct slash based on,
Yeah, they're skewed
they're
by
skewed.
whatever, yeah,
Absolutely.
feelings that we have. Yeah. Well,
Mm.
you know, I always loved the idea of doing a podcast and sitting down, especially like with you. But the terror also going into this is very real, and we were both like, yes, let's do it, but then also, oh dear, what are we doing? How is this even going to work if we don't even know what we're saying?
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, let me tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah, because I think mine feels very much related to writing, whereas like in our experiences, I think yours is to do with talking, like
Yes.
in the moment.
Yeah. Yes.
Tell me about yours.
Well, I feel like we have to go, like, let's go back to your childhood.
Yeah.
Woo, sparkles. um yeah, yeah. So I was always the kid in primary school, especially late primary school, that never said things. Would never offer myself to talk to the class or put my hand up or like even go up to someone and start conversations. And all through high school and stuff, I remember thinking like, how do people just know what to say all the time? Like there are people, you know how there are people in the world who can just talk and they can just talk for hours and always have something to say. I'm like, but how do they know? Like, where do you learn how to do
How
that?
do they pick?
Yeah. No, not even how do they pick. It's just like, how does it like appear? How do you know of things to talk about? And a lot of that probably came from me being a baby ADHDer, and my brain still developing and stuff like that. I feel like only now as like a 30-something-year-old person that I'm able to actually put some words together. Like I had all the feelings and everything going on, but I just wasn't able to, get it out of my brain and out of my mouth. And I think also I haven't had any tests or anything, but I think I had a lot of dyslexia as well. Like
Yeah, you've absolutely I'm sorry, but we traveled together last year, and it's the first time I've ever had to interact with Sophie reading street signs. Oh wow. I was like, oh yeah, you do have dyslexia.
yeah, it's
100%.
yeah.
I'm not a speech therapist or whatever, but I know you do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you think that because yeah, I've never actually even said the words out loud because I'm like I don't know. But like yeah, I'd be writing as a kid or like copying off the board and I'd have to like copy the same word like 2 or 3 times because they're all out of order or like I would just write a different word entirely. I just remember writing things and being like why is like the E at the beginning of the? It's like ETH. Like, that would just happen all the time, even with my own name. So like, yeah, the confidence was always very low with all words things. Doing oral presentations, talking in front of the class never happened. I would always get special, consideration to not do those, or I would make a little painting or a little art book instead.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of that. And then when I was an older teenager, I discovered the world of silent film, and I was like, yes, this is me. This is making art and making stories that don't involve words or anything written. It's all about expression. It's all about how they use their body. It's all about how they dress the sets. It's all about editing. It's all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is like what I'm going to base my entire personality on for the next 5 years or something like that. So yeah, I was all like, the moody teenager that
Of
was like,
course.
I'm not going to say words. I'm just going to like let my art
Speak for
talk
itself.
through. Yeah, it's going to speak through. I'm going to speak through my work. And yeah, it's so funny looking back, but it was just I would do everything I could to just not have to engage with people using words. And then when it came to like when I started dating, my partners would like literally shake me and be like, Sophie, talk to me, tell me some things. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know how to say things, but like let me just draw you some drawings and that's like how I feel. Like I remember breaking up with someone by giving them a little comic.
Stop it.
Yeah, rather than saying
Rather than like physically having the conversation and saying all the words to each other, you're like, here's a comic I drew. Goodbye. That is fantastic.
Yeah, like I just like sat frozen on the bed for like an hour, and they were like, "What do you like? What's going on here?" And then I was like, turned around and got this little comic out of my bag, and I was like, "There you go,
There you go."
Yeah. So, and I had people, these ex partners or whatever. I don't know why I always managed to date like really intelligent, intellectual, like very wordy, fancy people. And I got a lot of shame, especially early on, that I was using very, you know, common, basic words and not able to like get deeper and like express myself using the words. So my narrative was always, I just can't talk. I just can't say things very well. And yeah, I remember feeling like I was like, yes, I know a lot of words. Like I know a lot of words. I have learned a lot of words.
Yes.
I have been learning English my
From
whole
my
life.
whole life.
I have a ton of words, but like all these active words that I use all the time are like there and easy to get. But there are all these passive words. They must be having some sort of like beanbag party in the back of my brain. They're just chilling.
Having a sleepover.
There. They're having a sleepover. They're not interested in really joining the party that much.
No.
So yeah, it's almost like I have all these ingredients in my kitchen, and I know I have all these ingredients, but if I don't open the fridge, I can't see them, so I don't know what to make. But then also I can't open the fridge sometimes. Maybe.
Sometimes the fridge won't open.
Sometimes the fridge won't open.
Unless someone else opens the fridge and uses some of those words in a conversation,
they don't get sparked.
They don't get sparked.
Yeah.
If someone else uses them, then they might get sparked, and I might use them. But if they don't, I'm not sure going to use them.
There might be like a dozen words that like come into my conscious, and I use them regularly, and then I just like don't use them again for like several years until I open the fridge and like push past a few things to find them. Yeah, so yeah, and like, you know, as an artist, I make content. I have a YouTube channel and stuff, and I do voiceovers, and I always feel really anxious doing voiceovers because I'm like, what I say is not interesting. This ingrained self narrative of being like, I'm not interesting. I don't say anything smart. I don't say anything that anyone really cares about, and often I'll be talking and then I'll just like go blank and go silent, and then just there's like no words for like 2 or 3 minute stretches, even longer sometimes, and then I'm like, and then I just continue like as if the sentence wasn't cut in half.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know, people think that I speak well in my YouTube videos, but my God, editing. All the cutting I do, all the, so like I will have a 20-minute YouTube video. There will be 50 minutes of me talking, but a lot of that is just like long pauses. So there is like some sort of short circuit stuff that goes on in my head.
I'm really fascinated by like people's perception of you via your YouTube videos, and like knowing that there are like your perception of it would be entirely different, because the YouTube video, you're speaking in full sentences and it's like lovely and gentle and insightful, but it kind of doesn't take into the account like the whole process of like
all the invisible space that you
all
don't
the invisible space, the words you kind of get wrong and that you remember later. Like there's so many of those moments that, and that's like as our social media and our like media intake has gotten higher, and there's more of us do that. It used to kind of be you only did editing and stuff if you were working in TV or radio or whatever, and now, we are all doing it.
And we can all see, like, especially like with, I don't know, like reality TV, you see how much of that gets spliced up. And changed around and moved around. And I feel like sometimes I do that. Like I splice some of my stuff up and I will start a sentence. Not finish it. And then start talking about something else. And then I would finish the sentence that I had started at the beginning, and I'd like move it all
together. And so also the concept that all of us are like, intaking all this media, not knowing that all of it is edited. You know, like,
Mm.
do we
Yeah.
then expect ourselves to have this capacity to say sentences, never use and ah, never have
Mm-hmm.
gaps? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's wild because we have
Yeah.
so many gaps.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, and I want to slap my wrist every time I say like or
Um,
in my videos. I'm like, "Ah, there's another one. You could turn that into a drinking game, and you'd be sloshed for the rest of the day."
Yeah, I think like the yeah, our internal this is yeah, our internal narratives are completely different. But as again, I watch all your videos, and your art is incredible, and you are of it like part of the thing that is great about you and your art is that people I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear that, and I think a lot of other people do. And so there is something in you as well about communicating. It's not like you feel like you can't communicate and you're not interested in it. You are
Hmm.
interested in it. Like the idea of
Hmm.
falling in love with silent
Hmm.
films because there's so much communication happening without words. It's
Hmm.
not like you were kind of like, nah,
Yeah.
I'll just ditch communication. I don't really need it.
Yeah.
You wanted to.
Yeah.
And that I think is like key to why we're here and why we're doing these things
Hmm.
because just because words are hard doesn't actually mean you never communicate or you don't want to communicate. Because
Hmm.
communication is so much more than words.
So much more than just
And I
words.
love that about
Yeah.
our friendship because I think, since the beginning, those things that happen when you're in a conversation where you say something weird and it's a bit awkward, or you use the wrong word and someone's like, "What do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
do
Like
you know that you use
what?
the wrong word?"
Yeah. Yeah.
We've never really had that
No.
because there's something innate in our understanding of each other's quirks of language, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think some people, like lots of people, do have that. Like lots of people could probably understand us very easily. But in kind of mainstream, what's expected of communication and how we're taught it, it's a bit
Hmm.
weird.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah,
Exactly.
communication
And
between us has always been easy.
yeah, it has been. And like over the years, both of us, we've gathered a lot of other like little art friends. I feel like it's always artists or like
Yeah.
creatives in some capacity. Um, it's probably the neurospiciness. It's the sparkle brains. We yeah, it makes sense the way we
Mm.
talk. Like it's
And I think
I feel like
well, it's also that
yeah.
like because I think the reality is that that's not wrong. Like
Mm,
the reality is that we are taught a certain way of living and being in the world, and we're told that that's how you
mm,
need to be to function.
mm.
Um,
Essays must be written
yeah,
in this
you must
specific
structure your
way.
sentences this way,
Yeah.
and that actually we don't all do that. The world, like we've never been made to all communicate in the same way, but because of how everything
Mm,
is, we are kind of like, oh, I'm not good at that, or oh,
mm,
I can't communicate like that, so we'll just be over here with the other weird art kids. But
mm.
the reality is that the way we communicate and the way we communicate with our friends is perfectly normal and natural. It's just not the
Yeah.
dominant supported
Yeah.
stream. Um,
Yes.
it's just other
Yeah.
and but yes, because of society and how we operate, it's kind of seen as inferior, less than, um,
Hmm.
but it's just not. It's just not.
No. I feel like I feel like when talking with you and like other artists and stuff like that, the language we use is so onomatopoeias.
Onomatopoeias.
Like things sound like how they need to sound sometimes. Sometimes the words aren't exactly the correct words in context, but they might sound like the kind of thing that we want to portray
Yes,
in
and I
some way.
wonder about like what other communication is happening in those moments because there is like a
Mm,
level of attunement to each other where there's some kind of shared understanding beyond language so that when you say those words that don't make sense but do,
yeah.
we get it. And again,
Yeah.
it's not just us, it's like lots of
No.
people. And then I
Yeah.
wonder about different forms of communication where it's completely reliant on the verbal. And if there isn't that intuitive connection, they might be like, what? Hang on, that word doesn't mean what you think. But if there's like
Mm,
this kind of different connection there, it doesn't matter because of that connection. And I don't know what that connection is, but yeah, I think that is other forms of communicating. I don't necessarily think we need to understand every single word in its like original meaning.
Yeah, yeah. And like words can evolve as well.
Yes,
New words
new
are
words.
coming out all the
Oh my God,
time.
don't get me started. I got a little spiel about that.
Heck yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And there are
Yeah.
so many people in the world who are like, that is not part of the original Oxford Dictionary. That's
Oh
not a
my
real word.
gosh.
But like, oh, okay. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about that. I remember in primary school, the teacher in my class, it must have been grade 4 or something like that, grade 5 maybe. Everyone had to stand up and do like a little 2-minute talk about something about their personality, and they were not allowed to use ums, ahs, or likes.
Yes.
And I couldn't do it. Everything was like, obviously, because it was all short circuiting in there. But then I remember thinking years later about the word like and how, yeah, like we use the word like all the time and it's like this and it's like that. But I was like, but like is such an interesting word. It's such a good word because I don't always know the exact word to say. So something is like this or something is like that. It's similar, but it's not the exact same thing. So I feel like I use like a lot because of that.
Yeah, and I wonder about its importance in like language development when we are trying to figure out how to connect words and figure out the right words.
Mm.
Because if we can't, we're going to be like, oh, it's kind of like this, it's like that,
Yes.
like this,
Yes.
and that there is maybe a purpose to it. I also then wonder about like the dominance of it being connected to ditzy blonde women.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially growing up in like the 90s and early 2000s, which was
Yeah,
very
we
Barbie.
like was huge, and we did say it way more because it was part of media.
Yeah.
But that original kind of sense of what that word's purpose was,
Mm.
especially in young people and in language development, yeah, I'm curious.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
what it became to it moved on to represent
Mm.
dumb blondes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
there's always going to be those words that we use. Every language has filler words like
Mm-hmm.
and ah. They're not the
Mm.
same in every language. They'll have different sounds that they make, which are their connector words or their filler
Mm.
words.
Mm.
And also just the concept that as a society, we have to have those words because gaps is weird. If
Gaps.
we didn't
Yeah.
say ums or ahs and there just was silence while we were
Mm.
thinking,
Mm.
pe it would be weird. We make those
Yeah.
noises.
People would just cut you off and start talk.
Mm.
This isn't one thing that I always struggled with is because sometimes it takes me a minute to think of the words or the next sentence. I will have a stop, and if I don't go or something, it maybe the other person listening might be like, oh well, they've stopped talking now, so I'm going to start. But it's just like I just need to like let my brain just
I
like
need more
get back
time.
into gear. Yeah,
But yeah, and how we're taught, we're like, oh, wait, are they done? Okay, I
yeah,
should start talking because we cannot have silence.
yes, exactly, because that is awkward.
That is terrible. We
But
cannot.
I love it. I love a good silent moment in Friends.
Me
Like,
too.
and you know, like we will be talking about something and then hours will go past and then either you or me will just continue the conversation or like would find a way to connect it back. And sometimes it's like, wait, oh yeah, that's what you're talking about. And it just,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think when you're comfortable with silence, it is a lovely thing in friendships because there is like it's like silence between people if you're comfortable enough for it to be there. What a blessing because it's like a resting space. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to feel that pressure to constantly have words there.
Mm,
Um, it's a lovely thing.
it is lovely. We're
Tis
lovely.
lovely.
Aren't we
We're
We're just
lovely.
so lovely. Tell me
So
now. Give me your
lovely.
brain dump.
Okay,
Let's do
well,
it. Let's do a little segue.
when we were talking about words and all these things, I have a lot of thoughts that don't have words about the language is weird and dumb because we have so much communication in our bodies, in our facial expressions, in touch, in sounds that are not words. We have
Vibes.
so many ways in vibes. Exactly. But language is so dominant. And I'm fascinated by that. But I also don't know very much science behind that. Now, I am not a expert on words. I'm not a speech pathologist. I've never studied this. I dropped out of science. I have dropped out of psychology, my only science subject, to do art when I was in school. But I'm fascinated in, I guess, the social sciences.
Mm.
And so I did some research because I wanted to be able to say
And
things.
as a therapist as
Yeah.
well, this is definitely
Oh,
in your
absolutely. And also,
ballpark of
yes, as
interests.
an art therapist, like language and the communicating beyond words is deeply important to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to sort of then have some extra stuff that I researched to offer.
Hmm.
And so I went on a journey. I did Google language, words, and those kinds of
Wow,
things.
so
I
scientific.
know.
Love it.
I just
Mm-hmm.
start real strong.
All right, take us there.
Because my first thoughts were the act of saying things out loud there's a lot of steps that happen to get there. And one of the first things I found was these three words, which are all fancy words: conceptualization, formulation, and articulation.
Mm-hmm.
So, conceptualization, figuring out in your brain what you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
formulating the sentence in
Mm-hmm.
your head, and then articulating it out loud using muscles, breath, air. Um, it's actually like way more processes that we just take advantage of because we don't think about all the separate steps that are required. And we do it so automatically. But even as I'm speaking now, there's so many processes happening simultaneously for me to say these words out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fascinated by that.
Mm.
So then I found a podcast episode on Radiolab.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to try really hard not to just completely repeat the episode. This Radiolab episode came up, which was Words That Changed the World. And it is from 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite old.
It's like 15 years
But
old.
15
2010.
years old.
That wasn't that
Holy
long
crap.
ago. Hell no. Okay.
Because in 2000, 15 years before that was 1985.
No.
That's ridiculous.
That's so weird.
How weird.
So weird.
That's messed up.
Yeah, that
Okay.
is messed up. Okay.
So 2010, this episode came out. I'm still new in the Radiolab world, considering how many podcasts I listen to, because holy crap, this was great.
Yeah, I'm surprised
So-
you haven't listened to Radiolab before
I
this.
know.
They've got some
Same.
really fun stuff. Anyway, that's a chat for later,
Yes.
maybe.
Yes, like ours and their faceplates.
Amazing.
Don't get me started.
Okay.
Okay, so the episode is called Words That Change the World, and there's a few people they interview. Susan Shawler, who wrote a book called A Man Without Words. Charles Fernyhough, who's a psychologist, who wrote a book, 1,000 Days of Wonder.
I'm a Fernie ho.
Fernyhough. He's a Fernyhough.
That's me. I'm a Fernie ho.
And Elizabeth Spelke, who's a psychologist who studies pre-verbal and verbal children. So, the things that I wanted to tell you, which are wild. So so Susan Shawler originally studied American Sign Language and became an interpreter and worked in a library where people came to do sign language and learn sign language and have support. And she worked with a man who had no language, was deaf, did not know sign language, and could not communicate at all. So he would come every day and she would sign to him and try and teach him sign language, but he mimicked everything she did. So she would like sign table and point at it, and he would do the same. He'd point at it and sign it back. And there was no connection that is what it is.
A table. Yeah.
A table. And this went on for months, and she tried lots of different methods, and she ended up trying she performed a lesson. So instead of signing to him, she played two roles. She played the teacher, sat in a chair, pointed to the table, signed table. She then got out of her chair and sat in another chair as the student and looked at the table, went, oh, and then signed table back to the teacher and acted out learning. And over time, I think there were some other steps, but there was a moment where this man, who was in his 30s, she says in the episode, there was a physical body reaction, and he was looking around the room,
Wow.
and it was the very moment he realized that everything has names, and
Wow.
that all these symbols and names and hand movements everything has an identity, everything has a symbol.
Yeah.
And that's how we communicate. Before that moment, there was no concept of that.
The click, the massive click. Whoa.
So he had grown up. There was no communication. He didn't know how his name was his name.
Wow.
Because he didn't have language and he wasn't taught sign language. And I think he didn't know early on he was deaf. And so it was a concept he had never learned. And that's a very poor explanation of that process.
What about reading? I wonder if he could read. Obviously not.
I don't know. No, I don't think he could.
No.
I don't know. But then
That is wild. Yes.
Yes.
More. Tell me more.
Well, then that connects to a research experiment that Charles Fernyhough, I don't know if he started it, or if he continued it, but basically there's an experiment where they have a white room, all the walls are white, like everything's white, and they put a rat in there, and they put food in a corner, and they let the rat, they introduce the rat and try and see if the rat can find the food. And they get it right like 50% of the time. And then they put one of the walls blue. They make one of the walls blue. So the food is like in the corner to the left of the blue wall every time. It stays the same. And they spin the rat around. Oh, so the rat, when they first go in, they show the rat where the food is, then they disorientate them. And they still got it wrong. Like they got the same results. They don't have the concept to know the wall is blue, the food is to the left of the wall.
Always, yeah.
There's no connector. And so the blue wall, it may as well not be blue because there's the same thought process. They can't go, I remember, okay, I can see the food. It's next to the blue wall on the left side. I'm going to get spun around. Where's the blue wall? There's the food. It doesn't happen. It doesn't recognize. And they can see color. That's the other thing. So then they did this experiment with babies. And they found that roughly pre-verbal babies also got it wrong when it was all white. But they also got it wrong when the wall was blue. They got the same results. They couldn't connect a color to the left.
Yeah.
And what they found is that as they got older, they could connect the blue wall. The food is to the left. They think that children start to, and that's the idea of connecting concepts. There's two concepts. The food is in the corner. The wall is blue. If I combine those contexts, I can remember where the food is. And they think that there's a theory that children can't do this until they have language that lets them verbally connect it. Because they found that children start to connect concepts at the age of 6. Not earlier, 6. And they think that language is what is the thing that lets children connect concepts. because it is in saying words and in modeling words from our parents and like school, that is retraining our brain to make those connections
Whoa.
internally. And
Whoa.
so they think that creating pathways and connections in our brain is done through language.
That's so wild.
Yeah. And so the suggestion is that these words and symbols in our brains when we're little are just all separate islands and we
Oh,
can't connect them and they just live on their own. And then as we
wow.
get older, words let us go, oh, that island is connected to that island.
Let's build some bridges,
Let's build some
bitch.
bridges, bitch. Yes. Um,
Did
and
you see that episode or listen to that episode about the color blue as well?
no.
Because it's a similar thing. Like, blue wasn't a color that was talked about in literature. Like in Moby Dick, the
Yes.
ocean was red, and kids couldn't be like, unless they were told the sky is blue, they didn't know what color. It was just clear,
Yeah. Because they
right?
didn't have
And
that
then,
symbol yet.
and some countries, some cultures don't have the color blue. It's like greenish something or whatever. Like, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
So yes,
So
the
wild.
symbol, until we were like told and verbally had the process to connect these symbols, we didn't do it in our brains. And they wanted to try and see if they could do this with adults. But it's really hard to find adults who don't have language. So what they found is that if you put an iPod on with so you've got your test participant and you put an iPod on in their ears and you tell them they have to repeat everything that they can hear. And they found that in the process of repeating everything you're listening to, you knock out your capacity for language. So if I'm trying to repeat everything I am listening to, I all of a sudden can't use words myself. And they found that when they did this experiment, they had their test subjects, iPods on, repeating what they had. They show them the blue wall, food is in the corner. They spin them around, disoriented them, and then they let them open their eyes. They find it 50-50 again, same as though they
Whoa.
don't have language. So they
Yeah.
really struggled to find the bread or whatever it was
Yeah.
because their repeating words knocked out their own capacity to use language to connect, which is wild.
What?
I know. So from there, Charles, who
Yeah.
ran this experiment, thinks that young children don't think the way we do as we get older, and that he thinks everything is dependent on the acquisition of language. However, Elizabeth, who is another experimenter scientist who did this study, thinks that Charles is exaggerating the role of language because it is dependent on language and it excludes all forms of nonverbal communication and experiences that we do have. We do have nonverbal communication. And so Charles, they think his studies is missing that element, which I agree. We do have other forms of communication. So he's a little bit too reliant on that. Then
I see.
we get to James Shapiro, who is a lecturer, academic person, and studies Shakespeare. And he thinks,
Isn't Shapiro like a WWF wrestler somewhere? Anyway, that's
keeping
off
that.
topic.
I'm absolutely keeping that. That's beautiful.
I know that from my childhood.
So, James Shapiro, not the WWEF wrestler,
Whoever he is.
person, studier man,
Yeah. The sciencey man. Yeah.
science man. He thinks that Shakespeare, because Shakespeare invented a lot of words, and he thinks that Shakespeare was not as much of a like good writer as we think he is. He thinks that he was a word chemist because he was just smashing
love
words
that.
together, trying to come up with
Yeah.
concepts.
Yeah.
And some really good example of these are we didn't have these words. We didn't have eyeball. We didn't have anything where two words went together like in that way.
Yeah.
And we also didn't have as in unaware, uncomfortable. We didn't have those words. He invented the prefix un and put them together. And some of them stuck, such as eyeball, unsure, unaware, uncomfortable. and others didn't. And the fun ones that didn't are,
I
there's
am so
so
excited
many.
for this. Tell me.
One, I don't have many, but one is tanling, like
Yeah.
changeling. Tanling was very tanned person. Tanling,
Tanling.
we don't use that.
Yeah.
Slugabed.
Slug a
Slugabed.
bed.
What do you think that would
What?
mean?
Laying in bed like a
A
lump.
very lazy person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Slug a
And
bed.
then congreeing didn't work because we
Yeah.
already had agreeing.
Congreeing.
We already had agreeing, so congreeing.
Congreeing. Because con is with.
Congruence, connection.
Yeah. That's so funny.
So he, like, and his work is like littered with words that had not existed yet that he put into his language, into his plays. And there we have a lot of words now because of Shakespeare, but also there are a lot of failed words, which we love. And this continues to this day because everything is culture and era specific. Current ones that the young people come up with are riz, charisma,
Yes.
skibbity. I don't know what skibbity ever meant. Gyat, that means but. And these are connectors. And I love the concept that communities develop their own words to create connections, that exclude people outside of their group because it builds connection with each other. And that is fascinating to me.
That is so cool.
And then what else did I have?
I like also like different eras.
Yes.
So like, in the 60s, the absurdist, like Monty Python and the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, they like people like that, super absurd stuff would come up with certain languages, certain words and like phrases that like, one that I remember is like, not a sausage. Instead of saying no or incorrect or whatever it was, not a sausage. It's not necessarily a word.
Well,
but like,
that's a thing.
They probably
and
have
it was a connector. Like there are all these connectors between cultures in Britain, in English in the UK.
Australia does it a lot as well.
Oh, we do it heaps. But there's a lot of like not a sausage. There's a lot of shortened phrases that mean single words. And again, they're connectors. They're these insular community connections that we develop that signal to us that we are a group. Fascinating.
So cool.
And so in all of this kind of looking at how language works, obviously it is so deeply important and it signals like a sense of survival, because if you know the in language, if you know the cool words of this community, you are included. And if you don't, you're excluded. So language has always played such a huge role in community.
Social
order and connection and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
However, that means that if you're not good at language and if you're not good at words, it is really hard to connect. And it doesn't take into account all the ways we communicate that are outside language. Because that is massive. It doesn't take, like, if everything was about language, we wouldn't have music. We wouldn't have art in the way we do. There is absolutely, we wouldn't have dance. There is something.
Dance.
Yeah. We focus so much on language as that is our primary mode of communication in a sort of ableist world.
And also, like, art, dance, performance is so primal.
We've always
there
had
before.
it.
Words.
Yes.
And now that words are the main, you look at interpretive dance and people are like, what the heck? That's so weird. But before, that's how you told stories.
Yeah, exactly.
And, some cultures still do.
Well, it's also that thing that
But,
is often then with language, it becomes a disconnect when you have different cultures coming together. And actually dance, art is the connection when we don't have a shared understanding. Oh my God, I'm having a brainwave.
Take us on this surf.
Well, just this idea that Is language
Yes.
our capacity to connect with things we know in our own community, and our art and music, ways that we connect with people who are outside of our community? Like, there is just so much more accessible. I really
Mm,
like the idea that art and music allows you to bring your own context to the art or the music. Whereas words
yes.
don't let you do that,
Tell
because
you
if
what
there is
to,
a
yeah.
different language or you use a different word, I can't bring my context of language to a conversation
Mm,
in French.
mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Exploded.
Exploded.
Art is so cool.
Yes.
Like that. I am a huge fan of this Indigenous singer called Guramal, who's no longer with us. And I like obviously don't understand the language, but I'm not someone who cries easily. Every time I listen, it's just like out my eyeballs. And like, or if I watch, there's a documentary about him that I watched with my partner Thomas recently. I'd seen it a few times before, but like, they show a lot of like indigenous dance and music and like performance rituals, whatever. And I just watching their movements, listening to them, it's like you feel so much. I have no idea what's like going on, but it like I know that it's something
There's something
like
communicating.
my yeah, something is happening
Mm.
and it's very cool.
Yes.
Very, very cool. And it's the same with art. Like I think we touched on this at some point somewhere in our conversational times. Um I'll make a picture and it's like fairly abstract, floaty, something, something. And might have a meaning to me, and I don't necessarily like to tell everyone what it means because I like to see what other people
Because
like
yes, they bring
how
their
they read it, what it
context
means to them.
to your art,
Yes.
and they go, "Oh my gosh,
Yes.
this shape is so deeply connected to this
Yes.
own experience I had." And because you haven't
I
explained
often
that
get
verbally with your
it's
words,
open to
they're allowed to do
yes,
that, and they actually get to have that
connect.
experience.
I get messages often of people being like, this artwork helped me get through this, or this artwork reminded me of this, and then it tells me that I'm okay on this and this and that. And it's just like mind blowing that, like, a little me being a little blob drawing with these pretty colors can make
Yeah.
people feel like
And
that.
that's so much
Yeah.
more accessible than words. And that the fact that you don't,
Mm.
give, oh, I drew this because of this experience and this is this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, other people
Mm-hmm.
can bring their context. And so I'm really interested in the idea that word non-verbal, like, or even with the assistance of, I think that words are obviously very useful because we're doing a podcast,
Yes. Yeah.
but
I mean, yeah, we use
yes, we
them.
use them a lot with this idea that, yeah, with art, with dance, with music, we can bring more of our own context, and we can therefore understand more, or at least start the conversation. Whereas, really, with
Mm-hmm.
explicit language, there isn't necessarily space to bring your own context. And if language is something you can't access, if you can't access the words to describe your experiencing, um, you can't then move beyond that. So I think about my experience of like depression, and now, years beyond of journeying through mental illness, I know that I get depressed a lot, but I also get depressed when I'm burnt out. But early on, I had no sense of that. I just knew I was
Mm.
depressed, and it didn't connect to
Mm.
anything because I hadn't made that
Mm.
connection. And so if a doctor
Mm.
asked me, like, oh, why are you depressed? It would just be like, I don't
Mm.
know. I'm always depressed.
Mm. Mm.
If I don't have the language to describe that to a doctor, they're not then
Mm.
getting my full context, and they're not necessarily able to help.
They can't help
So the
you.
fact that
Yeah.
my depression is linked to my burnout, and that I couldn't articulate that because I didn't know, I didn't have that in my brain because I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't learnt that, and the doctors
Mm-hmm.
didn't give me the language to figure that out.
Mm.
My experience of depression was always very, yeah, it was its own thing. It there was never
It was
maybe do
unexplainable.
less.
Just
Like,
maybe, yeah.
oh, is it just that didn't happen?
It's just that I'm
Yeah.
broken. It's just that I
Yeah,
suck.
I
It's
suck.
not.
I can't do these things. Whereas so many years later, I can connect that, oh, when I'm burnt out, I get really depressed. It's not like I'm just exhausted. It's this feeling of depression, and now I can link depression to burnout. And now I get to address it differently because I've had the language and I've also had like seen it through other people communicating it through social media, etc. To go, oh, whoa, am I actually burnt out? Do I need
Yeah.
to recognize that I'm not a weirdo and that this is maybe just a
And now that
normal
you've
process?
and now that you've practiced that thought process with the new language that you have, you're able to be like, yes, it was burnout because if I stop myself or if I give myself more breaks, I don't get depressed / burnt out nearly as
And
often.
when I am depressed, burnt out, I'm going to do different things. Like, I'm
Yes.
going to,
You're not going to try and live your life the same way that
no.
you have been because that's not, yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like I've learned a lot about myself with that sort of similar thing as well since being diagnosed with ADHD. I'm like, I look back and it's just like flashing of movie being like, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
That's why this, that's why that. And like, I mean, a lot of that explains the language, especially like the short circuits that happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
fascinating.
And
Love
I
it.
think, yeah,
And I'm giving myself a lot more
yes.
grace as
Yeah.
well to,
Compassion. Oh, what a
yes,
thought that actually maybe if I'm just
so good.
caring to myself in this moment, that might help me get through this, whatever it is, rather than kind of
Yes.
hating myself because I'm broken, which is what I've been taught. Like I
Yeah.
should be able to manage this. I
Yeah.
should be able to get through this.
Yeah. I mean, it's easier said than done. A
Yes.
lot of old habits, like, yeah, you have shit
Yeah.
times, but sometimes you're like, oh, yeah, good old Sophie, just being her silly little
It's a lost
autisty
sausage.
self. So
She just needs to lie
I'm just
down.
gonna like spend the rest of the day, yeah, on the couch with the
Yeah.
doggies and drawing pictures for no one but
Mm.
myself.
And instead of spiraling and then potentially like getting hardcore depressed because the added thing of, oh, I suck at the world doesn't actually get added that time. And so it lasts less time. And so I think about, yeah, the concepts that art, music, movement are communicators outside of language, and that language itself is an actually very narrow field when we consider cross-cultural connection, cross-generational connection, and neurodivergence, different levels of capacity to talk, to hear, to see, to identify and process internal experiences and externalize them. There's actually so much there that if you don't have that ability to verbalize, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah.
that like brings me on to what we'll do next week, which is exploring pictures are easier.
Yes.
Because that in
Love that
itself is
shit.
then a whole thing that I haven't deep dived
Yes.
yet.
Yes. So excited.
Yeah.
Wow, brain melted.
Yeah, brain melted. And so that a lot of that, again, just to clarify, came from the Words That Changed the World episode on Radiolab, which you can just Google. And then just thinking more about it and thinking through my own experiences and experience of people I know, other neurodivergent people, and also work. I work, we don't necessarily have all the right words or the words we want, and we don't necessarily want to communicate them. And that's okay. Maybe we should do a quick game.
Let's just like lighten the mood with a quick little game.
It's Editing Lucy, jumping in here to let you know that the next segment relies quite heavily on actual photos of animals. If you would like to partake in this, you will need to watch the YouTube, where you'll be able to see the animals that we're referring to. And if you aren't interested in doing that, then you are more than welcome to take our lead and imagine animals linked with the words and sounds we create for them. And so maybe they'll be your own made-up animals using our words as prompts. Enjoy!
Segging the ways. I got segs. All right.
Oh, no,
No.
Sophie.
Wait, let me try.
You got segs?
No.
Do you know segs is a new word that people say for sex?
Oh, yeah, because it doesn't, like, the algorithm doesn't pick it up.
Yes, S-E-G-G-S.
I was thinking eggs, but instead of the S at the end of eggs, it's at the beginning of eggs.
Were you really?
Yeah. IRL dyslexia.
How did you not? I still am confused as to how your dyslexia never got addressed.
Well, the saying in my family was the words Sophie says doesn't always mean the words that Sophie means.
Also, then, don't let me sidetrack, this is for a future episode,
Yeah.
but the concept that all of our like diagnostic stuff is completely dependent on external behavior. So if you didn't have the external behavior of causing too much of a problem, you would not have gotten diagnosed, which is what happened.
Fascinating. Whoa.
Well, okay. In our own conversations, we have words that don't mean words. And Sophie has a lot of words that don't mean words, that are different things, and is very passionate about it. And so, yes, we decided, let's play a game to do with language and animals and onomatopoeia, which means the word sounds like the thing. Some examples are smooth, crack.
Triangle is like triangles are called kiki, and round things are called what is that science?
No, what are actual onomatopoeia words that you can think of? Flash. That sounds fast.
Splat.
Yeah.
Screech.
Yeah.
Plop.
Bubble.
Yeah. Twang.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Toot. So
I'm
fun.
gonna want a name for this game that you make up because it's your game.
Well, it's like an onomatopoeia kind of game.
Yeah. What would you call it?
Animatopoeia.
Animatopoeia. I love it.
Because it's animatopoeia. Anyway, good.
Animatopoeia.
So I'm thinking an image, an animal pops up, and I mean we think of a name or a sounding name. It could be a person. It could be a human name. It could be just like a weird made up word.
It could be anything.
And just like look at the animal.
Yeah.
The shape of the animal, what you know about the animal, and like make a name of the animal. Does that make sense? Let's just do a couple of like tests. Let's just see what happens. What the bloody heck? I want to make you bigger so I can see you. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next animal.
Flubadoob.
I was going to go florb.
Florb and flubadoob.
Yeah.
For everyone playing at home, that's a walrus.
A very lumpy looking florb.
Flubadoob.
Sounds like the Sims language. Okay.
Florb.
Next.
Mlem.
Flonk. Like Frank.
Mlem and flonk. Or Frank, yeah.
Nancy.
Bean dog.
Bin or bean?
Bean. Bean dog.
Bean dog.
Billy.
Billy, yes. Would you think of two names for these guys?
No, just one. 3, 2, 1. Wimple.
Flurfy. Cute. Wimple. I did Flurfy. Wimple. We were talking about wimples the other day, weren't we?
I don't know. What's a wimple?
Isn't it like something that nuns wear?
Oh, yes. Nuns wear.
Yeah.
Yeah. The flying nun hats.
Yes.
Next one. 3. Are you ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1. Flang door.
I obviously wasn't ready. Flang door is great. Let's just go with that.
What were you thinking?
I was trying to...
Did you not have one?
I was trying to, like, say a word that was, like, mixture between fear and teeth and, like, scratching.
Oh, yeah, that's hard.
Fliff. Fierce man.
Fierce man.
A very
Yes.
cute, fierce man.
Right.
All right, next.
This is so bad, but this is what immediately came to my head. I am just going to have to say it. Schlong.
I was going to say schlong.
It just is what it is. That's schlong.
Yes. He's just schlonging over the...
Just a schlong. It's so bad, but how is that anything else?
Slip, slop, schlong. Okay, next.
3, 2, 1. Bobbit.
Snippy, snappy. Bobbit.
Snippy, snappy.
I'm just a snipper, snappy.
Snipper, snappy.
Just snipping.
Snipper, snappy.
I like your one.
Okay.
Okay.
Helmet. Yes, both correct.
Helmet and git. I used to collect slaters. I used to full on construct.
Butchie boys.
I constructed full on like resorts for them and stuff like that with cardboard.
Did you call them butchie boys?
We call them slaters.
Oh,
I never, boys. And people call them pill bugs as well, which is also very cute.
Pill bugs, yes.
Okay, one more.
Yeah. Freak.
Massachusetts.
What? Harik and Massachusetts.
Well, I don't know why that word came into.
Welcome to our brains. We highly recommend.
That's the game. That's the game that we invented.
I want to play this every week now because this was really fun.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
how are we feeling?
That was really fun and silly. I feel
that
good.
Was fun. I like the deep dive, and then playing that made me feel silly and light.
Yeah.
And creative.
Yes, and it's good. It's like a different way to use your brain in a creative way because, like, what if we say the wrong words? Will we get judged? Like the schlong one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's what it's all about. It's just a silly time.
I feel happy right now and excited because I feel like I get to the thought process and the like moment of magic only by talking it through with someone.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. And
which I don't like doing
often like
anyway.
Accessible to sit down and like you talk through your stuff and figure it all out. So
yes.
Yeah, I mean, doing these little podcasts, doing the pencil dusts, we're figuring out our dust. And it's fun. Like, you know, how often do you get to do this sort of thing? So it's great. I feel good too. I feel happy and silly, and I feel like I learnt lots of things, and I feel like, you know, I feel better about my difference in being able to produce words and sentences and things. Word things. Lucy, do you have any heart sparkles lately? What is making your heart sparkly?
I feel like I could have prepared for this, and I haven't at all. Heart sparkles at the moment.
What about your hair?
My hair, yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. My most recent heart sparkle absolutely is shaving my head and then recently getting it dyed. So I shaved my head Boxing Day. And it is the greatest experience because I don't like hair on my face, I've realized. I also sweat excessively and it makes maintaining my head and hair easier. And the feeling of touching a like person's head when they've got really, really short hair feels so nice. I can just pat myself when I'm stressed instead of trying to find a dog to pat.
Yes, or like a stressy squish ball, like it's like a stimming thing.
It's my own personal patting thing. And then yes, yesterday I went and got my hair done. So now it is white with big colour brush things.
Yeah, it looks like someone's taken a brush which they've like dipped in multiple colours and just gone swoop over your head. It's really lovely.
So yeah, I'm heart sparkling about that. It feels not only fun and creative and like colourful, but also sensorily delicious.
I love that. Fun.
How about you?
You just suit shaved head so well as well.
I do.
I mean, sensorily amazing, but also just you've got a beautiful head shape. I've never seen such a beautiful head shape.
I feel like very lucky that I have a good head shape for this because it's aligning very much with everything in my soul.
Meant to be.
It is.
What's making me
What's
heart
your
sparkly?
Yes.
Ooh, I think about 2 weeks ago, I got myself an acoustic guitar. I have never held a guitar in my life. They are freaking huge. But just over the years, I've been like, oh, I kind of want to learn guitar, but like it's a bit hard. They're huge. They're expensive. Anyway, I got one at a garage sale, really cheap. I don't know if it's anything fancy or anything, probably not. Like it makes weird sounds sometimes. But I started at 0, not even knowing how to hold a guitar. It's been 2 weeks and feeling the skill development, even though I'm still extremely slow. It's only been 2 weeks. That growth, I feel like my brain is expanding. My fingers are getting better at moving. Like my muscles are stronger. Like there were some chords that I couldn't even reach my fingers, and now I can reach my fingers across the fretboard. And like learning a little bit of music theory as well has been really interesting. Yeah, I just am really enjoying learning to play a new instrument, and it's making me
what
very
a beautiful
heart-sparkly.
thing.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Because there is a really clear skill development.
And it's
like
very
clear,
fast.
you can't not. Yeah.
I know it gets to like a point where it plateaus and stuff like that. But at the moment, I'm just really enjoying it's snowballing. It's very fun. I love our heart sparkle moment.
I do love our heart sparkle moments.
Also,
it is good to make me think of them.
True. It's like a little gratitude thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are good to think of. I like them.
Yes.
So that's episode 3.
Lovely.
And this time I won't cut it off. What's on next week / next time?
Next time. Oh, I think we're going to have a very good episode next time because we're going to be talking about why pictures are good and easier.
Yeah.
Or something.
Why are all the non-verbal forms of communication delicious?
Yes.
And acknowledging they're delicious for us, but they probably might be very uncomfortable for other people.
True.
Other people might be much more comfortable with words. But yeah, there's a bunch of us who prefer pictures. Thanks for joining us.
I would love to hear what your heart sparkles are in the last week or have been in the last week. And yes, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, because it turns out that really does matter in order to be able to make money at some point to continue doing it. Recorded in Melbourne on the land of the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples.
Edited by Lucy Jane.
Animated by Sophie McPike.
And music by Rory McPike. Listen to us at PencilDust Pod on YouTube and Spotify.
Coming soon to more platforms, and see you on Instagram.